They would let hate win. Cheryl Corley, NPR News, Charleston.
Greece and the European Union are fast approaching a moment of truth. Greece needs help to make a big loan payment at the end of the month, but is balking at the economic reforms demanded by its EU creditors. Leaders from all sides will gather in Brussels tomorrow to try to negotiate a solution, but a threat of a run on Greece's banks is complicating things. NPR's Jim Zaroli reports.
So many times before, Greece and its European creditors have come close to the brink, only to work out a last-minute resolution. But it's never been as hard to see a way out of the stalemate as it is now. Jacob Kierkegaard is a senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics.
This is the last chance saloon, if you like, for this Greek government, and whether or not it wishes to avoid running into arrears, which is a kind word for saying defaulting.
Greece needs $1.8 billion to pay off a loan from the International Monetary Fund later this month. European officials are willing to help it roll over the debt, but only if Athens agrees to more painful tax increases and spending cuts. And that's something Greece's leftist government refuses to do. As the talks drag on, the rhetoric on both sides has grown harsher. Here was French President François Hollande speaking this weekend.
La Grèce doit prendre des mesures. Si la Grèce respecte
Greece has to take measures. If Greece respects the path, it will have all the money it needs. I'm not optimistic or pessimistic. We're in a crucial moment, and every moment counts.
Over the weekend, Athens made a new package of proposed reforms it hopes will unlock the funds it needs. But Ishwar Prasad, professor of international economics at Cornell University, says there's not much trust left between the two sides.
Both sides have hunkered down into their hardline positions, and it's going to be very difficult to reach a compromise at this stage.
With this latest deadline approaching, Greek citizens have been pulling money out of their banks at a faster and faster pace. They're worried that without aid from Europe, the banks will run out of money, and Greece will be forced to place tough new restrictions on cash withdrawals. Economist Simon Johnson of MIT says that's what happened during the Cyprus bank crisis in 2013.
Even when Cyprus remained in the euro area, restrictions were put on euro-denominated deposits in Cyprus. So people are not being silly by worrying about the risk.
There's even been speculation that Greece could be forced to declare a bank holiday on Tuesday if there's no agreement tomorrow night, and prevent its banks from opening altogether. The Peterson Institute's Jacob Kierkegaard says Greek citizens would be unable to access their own money, but the impact would be even greater than that.
There'll be a lot of businesses that also have their working capital in the banks, that use the banks to pay wages, pay suppliers and others. They won't be able to pay wages. Other workers won't be paid. It's really the beginning of a very rapid and very dramatic deterioration of the economy.
No one wants to see that happen, but the antipathy between European leaders and Greece has reached something of a high watermark. Even as the two sides prepare for their meeting tomorrow, there's plenty of skepticism that they can resolve the impasse. Jim Zaroli, NPR News, New York.
Last summer, the Ukrainian military pushed into Debaltseve, a city in eastern Ukraine being held by separatist forces loyal to Russia. In January, those separatists pushed back. And they Russian rebels took back the city, but many say they had help. There were these soldiers. You can see them online in pictures and on YouTube. Soldiers who looked different, from their faces to their unmarked uniforms, who reportedly backed up the militia with guns and tanks. Some locals still living in Debaltseve say these soldiers are part of the Russian army, even though the Kremlin denies it. So Vice News correspondent Simon Ostrovsky decided to track the soldiers through their postings on social media. His new documentary is called Selfie Soldiers.
I wanted to find any way to be able to confirm that what pretty much everybody already believes, which is that the Russian government has been directly involved in the conflict in eastern Ukraine. And just happened to be that it was the Russian soldiers themselves that provided that proof inadvertently by posting photographs of themselves online in Ukraine. It couldn't have been simpler, but you know, there it is.
So tell us about how you came across the selfies of the Russian soldier Bato Dambayev, and what you learned about him.
So we were working together with the Atlantic Council and Elliot Higgins, who's a citizen journalist who's been geolocating, which is to say finding the location of photographs for a long time, until we found one who'd posted a photograph of himself in an area that looked like it was a battlefield and was different from all of the other photographs that he'd posted of himself. So once we saw that there was a photograph there that looked a lot like it could have been taken in Ukraine, we started focusing on this soldier, and he was called Bato Dambayev. We traced his entire journey from Siberia 4,000 miles away to eastern Ukraine.
One photo in particular where it's down to like the individual branches on a tree that just match up perfectly. It's kind of hard to deny. You managed to actually reach Bato on the phone. What did he have to say?
He denied everything. I think he'd actually been prepared, as all soldiers are, that they're supposed to take off their insignia before they go into Ukraine. I know that he reported me having contacted him immediately after I spoke with him on the phone, and this isn't in the film, but the security services came and paid me a visit at my hotel, and I was essentially hounded by them out of Russia thereafter. It's a very sensitive issue. Everybody from Putin on down denies that it's happening. So until Russians understand, until the Russian government admits that it's taking part in the conflict, I don't think there's going to be any kind of a resolution, and I hope that this film brings us a little bit closer, at least, to that sort of an admission that it's going on.
Simon, I have to ask you, I mean, you talked about this kind of unnerving experience you had on this recent trip. On a previous trip, you were actually kidnapped by pro-Russian separatists. You're back in Moscow now. How safe do you feel doing this reporting?
Well, I'm not doing any reporting at the moment, so I don't feel like I'm ruffling anybody's feathers right now. I'm just here visiting friends and family. One other thing, I think that the way the Russians are trying to prevent this kind of reporting is I've been applying for journalist accreditation, which I've been able to get before, for the last year, over a year. And it was a few days after I was basically pushed out of Russia that I finally got an email saying that I would be denied journalist paperwork. An explanation has never been given to me, and I think this is an extra method that the government is using to prevent reporting on its activities in Ukraine.
Simon Ostrovsky is a correspondent for Vice News. Simon, thanks very much.
Thank you.
This is NPR News.
WNYC support comes from Bard College, presenting Summerscape 2015, featuring Pam Tanowitz Dance and Flux Quartet, June 27th and 28th. Tickets available at fishercenter.bard.edu or 845-758-7900. Join New York Public Radio's Community Advisory Board for a meeting with WNYC Vice President of News Jim Schachter tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. at the Jerome L. Green Space. Details at 646-829-4000 or WNYC.org.
I'm Stephen Dubner. On the next Freakonomics Radio, we all know how markets work. Supply meets demand with money in the middle. Those rules don't always apply.
Matching markets are markets where money, prices don't do all the work. And some of the markets I've studied, we don't let prices do any of the work.
How to make a match and win a Nobel Prize. That's next time on Freakonomics Radio. Here this and all our Freakonomics Radio podcasts at Freakonomics.com. You're listening to All Things Considered here on WNYC and WNYC.org. Good evening, I'm Sean Carlson. The Museum of the City of New York is highlighting how the city was the center of the folk music movement. A new exhibit features photos, videos, sound recordings, concert posters, and original instruments such as Lead Belly's 12-string guitar. Deborah Solomon is WNYC's art critic. She says folk music deserves a museum show.
We're all still singing the songs. Everybody, I think, knows the song, "This Land Is Your Land," and "Puff the Magic Dragon," and "Blowing in the Wind." So it's certainly a moment worthy of a museum exhibit.
The show runs until November. A look at our forecast for the rest of the afternoon. Chance of showers and thunderstorms. It'll be partly sunny through the rest of the day here with a high near 86 degrees. For tonight, chance of showers and thunderstorms once again, mostly before 11 o'clock. It'll be mostly cloudy either way tonight, low 71 degrees. For tomorrow, partly sunny, another hot day, high of 87 tomorrow. By tomorrow night, mostly cloudy, low 73. It's 86 degrees, partly sunny right now in Central Park. It's 520.
Support for NPR comes from WNYC members and from Squarespace, providing tools for creative individuals and business owners to make a website. Squarespace includes hosting, e-commerce, and 24/7 customer care. Learn more at squarespace.com/NPR. And the Gruber Family Foundation, supporting NPR's international coverage, which seeks to help bring the world's news home and provide listeners with a compelling and clear outlook of complex global issues.
It's All Things Considered from NPR West. I'm Arun Roth. Registered sex offenders believe the system is broken. They say laws that restrict their lives after they've served their time are violations of their civil rights. This year they were vindicated when the California Supreme Court unanimously ruled that San Diego County restrictions of where sex offenders can live breach parolees' constitutional rights. But as Chloe Persinos reports, victims advocates argue that these laws exist for a good reason. First, a warning, this story contains graphic descriptions.
In 2010, Frank Lindsay came home after running errands and noticed his front door was wide open. He went inside to investigate.
And there was a young man there in my dining room with 2 hammers, one in each hand.
The man had found Lindsay's address on California's sex offender registry.
He immediately raised the hammer in his right hand and started at me, indicating he wanted to kill me because I was a sick pervert.
In 1979, Lindsay pled no contest to lewd and lascivious acts with a minor under 14, child molestation. Lindsay was 26. He served his time, followed by an offense-free probation, and when it was all over, he returned to life as usual. He started a business and a family. But in 1996, the federal government required states to create a public list of sex offenders. Suddenly, Lindsay was online for everyone to see.
Neighbors who were very friendly quit waving. My business customers started not responding, and it just got worse and worse as my life was constricted more and more.
Today, Lindsay is on the board of California Reform Sex Offender Laws, one of many state affiliates of a national organization that advocates for sex offenders.
So why don't we go around the room here, and if you would, just tell us your name.
Every month, Janice Bellucci, an attorney and the organization's president, hosts a meeting. Part support group, part information session.
I'm Mike. I'm a registered citizen, and I'm here to learn more about the laws.
It's a small group today. They sit in folding chairs arranged in a circle in a tiny one-room church in Sacramento. There are a handful of registered sex offenders, all men, all middle-aged and older. There's a mother whose 20-year-old son is accused of first-degree rape, and an older couple whose son was just placed on the registry. They all look to Bellucci for guidance.
Once you're on the registry, you're on the registry for the rest of your life, with very few exceptions.
California has a lifetime registry, even for low-level crimes like public nudity. The reform group wants a tiered registry, like many other states. That would mean low-risk offenders are eventually removed from the list. But in general, laws that are tough on sex offenders are hugely popular. People feel they have the right to know where offenders live, that the registry helps keep families safe. Linda Walker is the mother of Drew Shadeen and an advocate for victims' rights.
When Drew would enter a room, she would light it up with her big, beautiful smile and her bright blue eyes.
In 2003, when Drew Shadeen was 22, she was abducted in a parking lot by a complete stranger, a previously convicted sex offender. He raped her, slit her throat, and left her to die in a ravine outside Crookston, Minnesota. It took police 5 months to find her body. What happened to Shadeen is as rare as it is horrific. The Department of Justice reports that 80% of female sexual assault victims in Shadeen's age group knew their attacker. For juveniles, that number is even higher, 93%.
I know there's the statistics, and I get that. But when people choose to do these crimes, we can't just sit back and give them more and more chances. We have to amplify the victims' voices as loudly as we can.
The National Sex Offender Public website, an online aggregator of every state registry, is named in Shadeen's memory. But policy research indicates registries may foster a false sense of security.
You know, really the consensus of that research does not point in the direction of registries reducing sexual crimes or sexual recidivism.
That's Dr. Jill Levinson, a clinical social worker who teaches at Barry University. She studies the way society monitors and treats sexual criminals. According to Levinson, there are 3 main factors that help sex offenders successfully reintegrate into the community: employment, stable housing, and good social support. Policies like the public registry and residency restrictions make it very difficult for offenders to find work and housing.
When you create a situation where people believe they have nothing to lose, they're more likely to act accordingly.
The California Sex Offender Management Board estimates that there are over 6,000 homeless registrants in the state, living on the street, sleeping under bridges, at rock bottom and impossible to track. For NPR News, I'm Chloe Persinos.
Task Force 2 is ready for anything. Based in Los Angeles County, they're one of only 2 official U.S. teams trained to respond immediately to disasters around the world. Vince Beiser wrote about Task Force 2 for California Sunday Magazine.
It's a team made up of mostly firefighters, ordinary sort of workaday firefighters, the guys who show up at traffic accidents and put out grass fires and get cats out of trees. Yes, they really do that. Plus a handful of civilian engineers and civilian doctors. And what happens is when the biggest disasters hit, when there's something on the level of a Hurricane Katrina or an Asian tsunami or the Nepal earthquake, these guys get called up, and within hours they're out at the disaster scene, wading through the streets or picking through the rubble and rescuing survivors.
And how did Task Force 2 get to be so good at recovering people from collapsed buildings, from those kind of situations?
So if you think about this county, firefighters here have to deal with basically every kind of disaster.